into the private chat because I always wonder why
It is showtime.
no one's talking to us, and I'm in the wrong chat box.
How's it, everybody? How's it?
I always select the wrong one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, put in the comments.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Hey. Okay, well, I can see Chuck in the comments there.
Yeah. So first of all, it seems like it's been since all three of us have been on a live stream together. Like, I don't know.
It's been a while.
Has it been 2 months or better?
Yeah, it's probably been about that long. Yeah.
Maybe longer. So it's crazy.
You're like a different person today, Chuck. You got the beard,
the scruffy beard, and
I have.
It looks awesome.
Mountain man. I'm going for the mountain man look.
My wife says from across the room, currently my face just looks dirty. So it's just I've not been growing it for very long. I guess just a couple weeks. So we'll see.
I'm trying to think who the actor is. It's making me think of somebody, and I can't think of who it is. I don't know if it was the Dr. House guy or someone else.
Well, I hope they're ruggedly good looks. Ruggedly handsome,
and
not just some scruffy bum.
They were memorable. That's the point. They would be memorable in my head.
Well, I was a big Kevin Bacon vibes for me.
Oh, nice.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's
I eat a lot of bacon.
There's something from a movie, almost like from that. So yeah.
So I was telling you guys earlier, my wife stuck her head in the door and said, "I love the title," because I occasionally make excuses about doing things.
Yeah.
And
I
think that's a big problem with a lot of us.
A lot of people go down that road.
Yeah.
And I'll hit on my points here on it when we get a few more people and it gets rolling. That you guys know I'm going through more garbage.
Yeah.
And it's no excuse. I'm not going to make it have an excuse for me to go do something stupid. I'm close, but I won't.
Well, I'll just tell you while we're waiting for, before you hit your point, I'll just tell you now it's been a couple of weeks, but our youngest daughter and our son-in-law Brett were here for about a month. They moved from Fort Leonard Wood to Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, put their house on the market. It sold in 3 days, and so they were with us for probably right around 4 weeks or thereabouts. And of course, they're both young. Brett works out like 5 days a week, so he's all ripped. And Fairlight's, she's 5 foot tall and weighs about 104 pounds. So they're young and in good shape. They have their little baby who is just turned a year old, but they eat predominantly good food, right? So they actually have done pretty much keto, carnivore style stuff, kind of on and off. But one of the things that at their age and their activity level that they can indulge in, Fairlight often will make homemade stuff. And on occasion, she would bring that down, to me and to Joni. But they were here, right, this whole time for like just solid. So Fairlight's like, well, you won't see us for a long time. I'll make you some homemade cinnamon rolls. And then it's like, well, you won't see us for a long time. I'm going to make some cookies. I mean, it was like terrible. Well, they were awesome. But the thing was, it was, and I didn't suffer any ill effects. I certainly picked up a few pounds, which I've lost, just a couple of weeks after they've left. But I can imagine how difficult it is for people who are in that environment all the time, every day. And of course, at least this was good. I mean, she used real butter. She didn't use seed oil, but it's still grain. I mean, it's still cinnamon rolls, even if she's using, real cream cheese and butter and stuff in it. You still end up with the grain part, right? The flour. There's no getting away from it. But it did make me think about people that are in that environment all the time, nonstop. And I can imagine it's pretty difficult to, to get through that. if you just, constantly, instead of people that being there to help you, people, uh, are not a benefit. They're a hindrance, right? Where my wife's just always been super supportive, does this with me, not because she has a necessity necessarily. She does it because she thinks it will keep her healthy, and so do I. But she didn't need to lose weight. She didn't have health issues, but she's done this with me all the time I've wanted to do it, which from when I started, it's 5.5 years ago. And then I was off the rails for a while during that time, but I started quite a good number of years ago now. And, she's always done that with me and helped me, been willing to do whatever. And I know that a lot of people aren't in that environment, don't have that type of support. So I can imagine it's pretty difficult.
That's especially hard when you're first trying to get started and there's all that stuff around you, and those first few days, and you keep getting knocked off the wagon because of course your cravings are strongest in those first few days, and it's just like, I just need to stick to this. But no matter what, you give in all the time, and it's understandable. I mean, I've been there myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks.
And I think go ahead.
B Rose said she was getting a bit of a David Carradine vibe from me, I think.
I saw that.
Thank you. I think that was meant to be a compliment. I'm taking it that way, B Rose, even if it wasn't. So
I think also too, when you're starting, there's so much change, and you're like, you might not be hungry, but you don't know how much to eat. You're okay. Did I eat enough meat? Well, I'm still a little bit hungry, and you don't realize you might have to eat more than you think. And then that leftover Alfredo is just sitting there in the fridge, and you're like, well, just a few bites won't hurt. I think those are the little things too, when you're, beginning with that.
The start, I think you're much more visually driven at the start, because it's the emotions are still with food are still very high, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, Dave, that those what used to be, I think before we came live, actually, we were talking about the habitual side of that. Eventually, the opposite. Once you are kind of in whatever it is, for us, it's carnivore and other things. But once you're there for a while, that becomes the norm. And I used to, I if I was stressed, I was upset, I was I'd just be eating whatever. And now again, that's abnormal for me. In fact, it's almost the opposite. I get real stressed out, I get upset, I just don't eat. Right? It's the exact opposite of what it used to be. But yeah, all of those things. I mean, just eating out of habit. Those things all happen. But in the end, though, which I know Chad's going to hit on his points now, but in the end, we all have to make that decision to change, to do something different.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we do. We've all heard this. We've all heard it from people that we know, the people that we've talked to. There's always some reason why they can't do this, or this doesn't work, or whatever it is. And that's an interesting phenomenon. And I think there's lots of reasons for that. Lots of reasons why people make the excuse, right?
The excuse becomes a justification. They turn that excuse. So I don't have an excuse. I have this justification that it's okay that I'm doing this because so-and-so does this. Or, well, they're doing it and they're doing really good. So I think, too, that sometimes that excuse in their head, they don't think of it as an excuse because they're turning it into something that somebody else is doing and they're getting results, but that's not them. But kind of the idea about this, some of you guys know I lost my dad this last month. Well, Friday, I just lost one of my best friends, unfortunately, and he was overweight, drank too much. And I'd had some good heart-to-heart with him, about changing because he had seen my change. And, it just kept going away. He's also having, or was having problems with his mom needing hospice care and stuff at home and doing all these things. And I know there was all this burden on him. And it's the same thing. That can't be an excuse. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's not harsh. You know what I mean? It's obviously said with love that, you've also got to take care of yourself. But I know what that mental stress is like because I just went through it for 3 months with my dad that was just viciously horrible. And the one thing I'll mention that's strange is like from Friday to last night, remember us talking about how like I'm very good on not changing my diet? I went up 5 pounds again. And I think it's just over the stress of me losing my friend. Like literally, I couldn't believe it. I stepped on and it's like 5 pounds up. Just like that, without changing anything over a few things. And of course, the other bummer is on Sunday, I just lost another friend. So, there was a family friend. So it's just been like one hit after another. And I wouldn't even say I'm tempted because I'm so long into this, but I think that would probably derail a lot of people if they were starting because, I mean, there's such an emotional baggage and burden on that. And I would say the only thing I've done is I've made some of that carnivore ice cream the last couple of days just because, and that's not really much of a diet change because I'll still have my other dairy. But like today, instead of the cheese, I just had some of that to see how that did with my no gallbladder because for whatever reason, it seems to kind of work. So I'm also kind of balancing, but that's actually after that kind of happened anyway. And that's at least the furthest I'll ever step out. And I just make like one little serving at a time and that's it. So I still won't step out of that ring into other stuff. My daughter's birthday was the other day and a lot of people know I'll have 2 bites of my kid's birthday cake. But so to the point of excuses are the things like we were talking beforehand, like I quit coffee. Some of you guys don't quit coffee. I did it because I noticed the difference. So I quit. See, and that's probably his coffee right there.
It's actually
but
water.
It's like, okay.
But
it's like,
but sometimes
if you're
it
not
is
having
coffee.
problems, it's no biggie. But if you are having problems, then it's a big deal. It's like I was saying, some people that are doing carnivore and having a really hard time losing weight are still doing dairy. And they're like, well, it's carnivore. Well, so-and-so does it. It's like, yeah, but they're not, whining or complaining about not losing weight. So if you are doing that, don't even make that excuse that they're doing it. You've got to find your own path. And that's kind of the thing of don't make excuses. And one of our other good friends, it was like a friend with a bunch of us where we lost, the same friend here recently, Friday, is now on Ozempic. And his wife's actually a carnivore now. And I love the guy. And it's like, I even asked him, I said, dude, is this a wake-up call for you? And he said, yeah, but, it's hard in the industry he works in and everything else. And I'm even saying that I understand it is, but you got to sometime at some point do this. And all of us know this comes from deep inside. It has to make the change. You know what I mean? Something has to drive us. So I'd love to hear you guys too in the audience, if you've come across people, that have had bad things happen and have they changed or do they justify it, make an excuse, whatever we want to call it. That's kind of the rundown of where this came from.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that play in, right? Some of it is, I think sometimes people don't want to try. And what I mean by that is they don't want to try a new thing because of especially in weight loss. Look, I can just tell you from past experience. And Dave, I know this has not been quite your experience as much as maybe mine and maybe Chad's, but I know many, many people that have lost hundreds of pounds over the course of their life, right? And gained it all back. And so you try all of that stuff. And once you fail over and over and over again, you begin to get this mentality that even when things are going right, in the back of your mind, you always have this thought, it's just a matter of time, right? Before the wheels come off. And, and I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose control again. And so part of it is the notion that there is that fear that, like, why am I going to try this again and go through all this again? Because in the end, I'm just going to be fat and in bad health anyway.
Mm-mm.
But the other part of that is that especially in the beginning, it's not easy, it really is not that difficult. It's really pretty simple to do, super strict keto or carnivore, but
Yeah.
it's not easy, right? It's
Mm.
simple, but not easy. And getting through the beginning part, a lot of people would just prefer to not to have to deal with that, right? It's like it requires some effort and some work, and you really have to want it. And I think sometimes that's the issue. Um, the issue with working out and those types of things. I mean, that's still an area I'm just a total slacker in. But it's not because I can't do it. It's not because I don't have time. Yeah, I say those kind of things, right? Yeah, I'm super busy. I don't have time, whatever. The reality is, if I wanted to do it bad enough, I would do it. And, now if there's some physical thing, I break my leg, okay, sure, I can't go for walks. I can't sprint. I can't do that. But currently, I have none of those issues. The only issue is the real desire to do it and to actually, just buckle down and get through the first month or two and move on. And that's a hard thing. It's one of the things I want to talk about at some point, and I want you guys to give me your feedback on that. And that is, I think that's half the struggle. Like when I started this again, after all my failed diets in the past, I really did. I didn't know if I could do it. I really didn't know if I could succeed, but I really wanted to. I wanted to enough to commit to it. And I think part of the thing with excuses and those types of things is um, part of it's just they don't have a lot of hope that they can actually succeed. I think people have been told for decades, for the last 50 years or better, that the way you lose weight is to eat like a rabbit and, to do workouts for 90 minutes a day, and that carnivore thing and that keto thing is all insane. And so that's working against, the vast majority of people. Their constant failures in the past, because look, if you weigh 300 pounds, you've been on 24 diets throughout your life, and none of them work clearly, right? Because you still weigh 300 pounds. So until I started doing keto and carnivore, it was the same for me. I'd been on 24 diets and failed at every one. I'd lost a bunch of weight, but just gained it all back plus more. So all of those things work against people. And then it's easy to either just, say it won't work for me. I don't want to try it. It's not healthy, whatever. Right. And so they just don't go down that road again. And and really give it a legitimate shot. Right.
Yeah. Can I just to build on that? There's a couple of things I think. One of the things really resonates with me that you said is just waiting for the wheels to fall off. People kind of get on a diet and they go, "Oh, I'm doing okay," but then the back of their mind they just think, "Yeah, but I'm gonna put all the weight back on," and it's just a matter of time until the wheels come off. I think that's kind of a human condition that you almost have to program yourself out of, because that happens. I can relate that to when I've been in business before, or attempts at business before, or when I get a promotion at a particular job or whatever it is, and you're just sitting there thinking, yeah, things are going all right now, but it's only a matter of time. In a few weeks, something's going to happen. Right? Something's going to happen, and the wheels are going to fall off. And so I think it's just one of those things where you got to go, okay, well, I've got to buckle down, and I've just got to do this as hard as I can, and I'm going to assume that things are going to go okay. But I think that also comes down to choose your hard. It's really hard to get started, especially when, as you say, people at home who might be eating normally or whatever, but you choose that hard, or you choose the other hard, which is long term, dealing with diabetes or dealing with stroke or dealing with all these other things that come along with it.
We used to do a lot of cliff jumping in the islands, and sometimes we bring tourists to, points where we would jump off. And some of them were pretty, over 50 feet, which is a pretty good leap of faith. But even on some of the other ones, it's like that. It's that initial, you get up there and you look down and you start psyching yourself out, and then you never want to jump. If you just get up there, look at it and go, okay, I can do this. You guys just did it, and then just jump. Then you realize the fun and you end up doing it a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and
what happens for so many people, and Dave, I'm glad that you could kind of relate to what I was saying, because I have actual, examples from personal examples. One of the things I know, Chad, you did a lot of different sports stuff. I don't know, Dave, I'm not sure if you did, but when I was younger, I used to play tennis, and one of my friends, we'd play tennis, and he beat me all the time. And eventually, what would happen is there'd be games when I would be winning, clearly winning, right? And I would still lose those games, because in his mind, he is thinking, I beat him all the time, I'm going to win, even though he's up, right, by 3 sets or 3 games. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, even though I'm up 3 games in this set, I'm going to lose, because I lose every time. And that way of thinking constantly, it just wears on you in a way. I've actually traded futures a lot, and it's the same thing. It's like I can start and I can just have a stretch of 2 months of doing great, but in the back of my mind, there's always this thought, and all of a sudden, and that thought actually is like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. You begin to actually press. You begin to to get tense about what you're doing, whether you're playing sports. I mean, I've experienced in playing chess against different people where they beat me all the time. I beat a guy for the first time recently who's significantly better than me, and even in that game, I remember how nervous I was. Like, I'm up a full piece. I don't know if you guys play chess, but I was up a full piece, clearly winning, and even then, it's like I was so nervous and got so tense and so worried, like, what am I going to do to like screw this up right at the last minute? Which I didn't, and I managed to win. And once you do it once, it really does help, right? It's that one step where you begin to believe, well, maybe I really can do this, right? And but it is difficult sometimes to get past that point, and it was that way with weight loss with me, right? Until I really had some success. And I felt good doing carnivore. I wasn't starving all the time. That I really began to think, man, maybe I really can do this. And that change in mentality is a huge thing. I mean, you can't underestimate that, right? What you think and how you think about yourself and how you speak about yourself and the things that you do have tremendous impact. I think we vastly underestimate the way that those things affect us.
There was a quick story that almost kind of relates. I was in like a Bible study Friday morning, met a guy, actually pretty interesting guy. He had beat cancer, and he's 59, so he's a year younger than me, and we were talking about, food and health a little bit, and I was mentioning what I do, and he's like, yeah, but, the stuff has, it clogs your arteries and your calcium, and your cholesterol goes up. He goes, there's no denying that. And I'm like, that's just a bunch of, and I just went, well, so in science, you got to start believing. I went off on all this other political idiocy on him, and it kind of shut him up, I guess, for a second. He's like, well, yeah, but I've been eating, vegetables for, only 5 years, and I don't eat meat. And, and I was not mean. I'm like, brother, this is the thing. Look at you, look at me. I'm a year older than you. And I said, do you really think you're in prime shape? Because he wasn't. He was definitely like 40 pounds over, at least, and kind of the big man boobs and that kind of, I always call it a robin belly when people get that weird bloated, but their legs are really tiny, that look. And I'm like, try it. Just why not try it for 90 days and see what happens. Oh, I'll never try that. And I go, what have you got to lose to try? Well, no way would I ever even try that, man. This is working. And I go, but again, look, I've got a flat gut. I'm not having any issues, and I've been doing this for over 5 years, eating meat, 4 years strict. It's just try it. Just give it a try. So, if worst case, you just go back to doing what you're doing. No way. To me, that's almost beyond an excuse. It's just like, so dig your heels in. I don't know about you guys, but I just don't understand that mentality of like, no way will I even ever try this. It's not like that radical of a thing with how many people still eat meat.
I think a lot of that comes from discomfort, I think.
You think?
You're telling me what I'm doing is like, basically, I mean, you're not literally telling him he's wrong, but like,
but
in his mind, he's got that barrier. Well,
yeah.
In his mind, he's got that barrier up. It's like, you're telling me I'm wrong, and that means I have to doubt everything I ever imagined about the world, and that's uncomfortable for me. So it's easier just to shut it down, I think.
Yeah,
it could
or
be.
unless
And it was
it's just
interesting because
you don't want
it was
to try
very mutual.
all.
We were getting along. It wasn't like, a bad thing because we're in the Bible study. We're both, I just go, look, man, I think though, when people, this is kind of where an excuse, and we covered this before, where justification goes to one side and complete denial goes to the other side of an excuse. Maybe, if that makes sense. Where I'm sure some of you people have met people like that, where they're just like, no way, like hard stop, no possible way. Or some will make the excuse. And again, even some of us in the carnivore will make an excuse. If we're stalling and having problems with weight, and you say you have a channel or you don't have a channel, but you ask 5 different carnivores, well, I'm not losing the weight I want, I'm still 40 pounds up. A lot of it's going to be, well, first, what are you eating? Then if it comes in like, well, I'm eating a lot of dairy, it's like, well, dairy is a known thing that can cause, it's not bad, but it is for some people something that helps keep the weight on or stall the weight. So just try dropping it, or if they came in and they're having some other issue, like the weight came off, but they're still having a lot of, joint pains or something like that. And they are still drinking coffee again. Like, Dave drinks coffee. Chuck, I think you're still drinking coffee, right? Yeah. But you guys, like I said earlier, aren't whining about like, oh, my joints hurt. Oh, I can't stand this. This carnivore isn't working. It's kind of like, if you're saying, well, yeah, but my joints aren't feeling any better, I'm still doing carnivore, man. And I just, my back ache still. It's like, well, yeah, I'm still having 4 cups of coffee with cream a day. It's like, well, stop that and let's see what happens. And even so, I think it's not just an outside excuse coming in. It's just these excuses. And some of this kind of triggered me because, like I said, man, I'm just so sad for losing my friend because he didn't need to go. He was only 43,
Wow, that's really young.
Yeah, that's young.
And, it was the drinking. And we kept telling him, don't be drinking so much, and then being out of shape on top of it. Once those complications start setting in, that's a tough one. So, you know what I mean? Well, you love your friends, and even if you lose them, it's that kind of like that honesty point too. It's this didn't need to happen. And it was an excuse that let it happen, I guess.
Well, and again, I think that we all do this to certain levels, right? The issue is the levels that we try to do it at have minimal amounts of negative impact in our life. And that really is what you have to do. And again, that's a difficult thing to make an honest assessment about what is the real impact of what I do, right? Whatever those things are. Dave mentioned, I think before we came live, about coffee. Yeah, no negative impact as long as he doesn't mind not sleeping. And see, that's the thing. Yeah. So I don't sleep enough, right? But I know why that is. It's because I drink too much coffee. And a lot of times I get off work at 3:30 and I'll go lay down and take a nap for an hour. All right. Okay. Well, that's not good for sleep, right? So a pot of coffee every day, take a nap in the middle of the afternoon, don't go to bed till midnight, get up at 6 and go to work. That's not ideal.
Yeah.
But I know why that exists, right? It exists because I make a choice between doing those things or not doing those things. And, not great amount of sleep. It's not great for me, but I can kind of live with the downside, right? The dairy that I still have will still give me a little bit of congestion in my nose. I know what happens, right? So I make the choice, and we try to minimize those things as much as possible. But we all do it, or the vast majority of us do it to some degree, right? I still spend too much money, but I don't spend us into bankruptcy, right? And so there's a difference. I don't really drink anymore, but when I did, I would drink some, but I didn't drink, I didn't get hammered every day, because that's just a recipe for disaster. So, we all do those things at some level, but the reality is, as adults, we should make an honest assessment about my behavior. Is it worth the trade-off? Right?
Yeah. I'm going to hit this really,
I can do the dairy and accept the trade-off of a little bit of congestion, right? But do you want it to, I want to eat at McDonald's every day and have Twinkies and Ho-Hos and die at 55, or do I not? Well, that's not worth a trade-off. That cost is too high for me. But that's kind of the spot some people are in, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I think this is true to what she's saying here. This just eating isn't enough. It's like that change of the mind. It is. It's that breaking the old habits and forming new ones. And this is where even I rally on some people that are doing like the quote carnivore pizzas, or too many like pork rind nachos, or trying to, alternative food, one thing or the other. If they've got
I've never had pork
disorder,
rind nachos.
Yeah. But if they've got like if they've got an eating disorder and they've got to get away from that snacking, then it's time to stop those, break the habits, and then bring them back later on if you want. And again, if you're not having a problem with it, have at it, enjoy it. But there's a question here, so let's hit this.
The only right way to do carnivore is the way that it works for you. You can't go and find the video of this is the correct way to do carnivore and say, okay, well, I can do this, and this, and that's all right. Not if it doesn't work for you, right? If you still have issues, you're not able to get to where you want weight-wise, health-wise, then you're doing it wrong, because the only right way is the way that actually works for you, right? It's just like, I can drink coffee, I can have some dairy, I'm okay with that. Not everybody can, right? And so it's not sufficient. You mentioned it earlier, Chad, and that is, you have to be willing at some point to make some change to see if you actually can, get the results that you want. Some people eat one meal a day. Some people can eat 3. Well, I don't eat 3, right? But some people do. I did lots of intermittent fasting. Not everybody has to, right? But some people do. That's just a reality. We're mostly alike, but we're still different. And you really need to tweak things if you get to the point to where it's not working.
Yeah.
So let's hit this real quick from the CGM. Recently appears from the CGM reports, the closer I eat zero carbs, the more rapid my progress. I'm curious what the rapid progress, which way, like getting better, I guess. For several weeks, my worst day has been 6 to 8 carbs, maybe 1 day a week. I guess I'm curious more info on what your progress is, like getting better.
Is Paul saying it's getting better or it's progressively getting worse?
Yeah. If it's getting better, I will say this, what's interesting is I have that little keto mojo thing, and I was going to play around with doing just for curiosity, because some people are curious. And I think a lot of us know this because when Sean Baker had that CGM on for a while, he would talk about it. And it's like, if I go out and do my hike and come back after a hard 3-mile hike, if I do my prick test before I go out, and then when I get back, it's just like radically different.
Yes.
And so I think
Paul said it's getting better. Well, I'm not surprised by that.
It's getting better. And if it's consistent where, the time of the day and when you do it, before or after meal, before, after working out, or even if you get up, like my morning routine, might be going out. We like to take care of the birds. So I put some fresh water out for the critters, here in the desert, and do stuff. And even that amount of moving around changes it.
Yeah.
If I strictly get up right out of bed and do it versus an hour after doing some chores, then after a hike, they're all three different numbers, and I haven't eaten, I haven't done anything different. It's just purely what I've been doing.
When I'm really pretty strict, the other thing that happens, and my wife sees this pretty radically in her blood sugar numbers, and I certainly see it in mine. Oftentimes, Joni's fasting glucose in the morning now is higher than when we started doing carnivore. But it is the highest at that point in the day, and it drops throughout. And oftentimes my fasting glucose will be higher than at any other time during the day. So, a lot of people, I think, I don't want to say it's common, but it's not that uncommon, right?
Yeah.
So,
what are your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, so Paul's saying later on, 4 weeks off all insulin. Yeah, he's getting better. So, yeah, I mean,
so we know.
Yeah, congratulations.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, Paul.
And
really
also
good.
metabolic paramedic, same for me.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Any
So I
thoughts
mean
on that,
that's great.
I think the carbs at 6 to 8 weeks and a bit of variation. The fact that the trend is you're off the med stuff that's all you need to
6
know.
to 8 carbs is low. That a lot of people talk about doing 0 carbs, and I think really what they mean predominantly is they're not taking in any carbohydrate type food, right? It's virtually, well, I shouldn't say it's impossible. It's difficult to get to no carbs because of the fact that almost lots of stuff in carnivore still has some carbs, right? My heavy whipping cream has some carbs in it. So, but when I'm doing 0 carbs, what I mean is I'm not doing any blueberries. I'm not doing anything outside of meat and dairy, right? So, and I do that not as much as Chad does.
On purpose.
I'm
not purposely taking in carbs for my nutrient value. I'm not going, okay, I need X amount of carbs, which again is
I'm
fine
not
if
eating
you're doing
vegetables.
keto.
I'm not eating vegetables. I'm not eating grains. I'm not eating.
And keto people
even
might
dark
want to.
chocolate.
They might want to say, I'm going to bring in 20 carbs. And if they figure out what that is, that's perfectly fine too, because it's a known value.
Yeah.
So there's it's never about the no carbs. It's just about, that optimum for you.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what Chuck was saying before. It's just, whatever works. Everyone's got to find exactly what works for them. And as you say all the time, Chad, it's a process of testing, right?
Yeah. I think you and I are the same. You got to test, everything and decide. On this, she said
she was having meat versions, not hanging. Hanging meat aversions is like you don't want to dress your own deer or cow, but having meat aversions, that would be annoying for me. I would start.
What do you think about this, Chuck, real quick, and then we'll let Dave hit it.
An interesting thing, I don't know where Simply Minimalist lives, but I know one thing. There really is
like the minimalist,
a thing you can get from Tick Bites that actually gives you an allergic reaction to meat for about a month to 30 to 60 days, which also would be really bad.
I think it can last up to years. I think it can last years too. Yeah.
Oh, well, I haven't had that.
It's more common in Texas and stuff.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I mean, is it like recent? Like you used to like meat, but now you're having an aversion to meat? I don't know. I've never had that. I've had times when I don't have any appetite, and like no appetite at all to eat. Like nothing is appealing. Yesterday that happened. I didn't. My wife said, "Do you want some of this?" So I said, "Nah, not really. I'm not really hungry." But I actually went down and started eating it, which it was ribeye, and it was awesome. And so after first 2 bites, I ate it all. That. But
That's
so I've
your
never
thought
had
on
an
this,
aversion
Dave?
to meat though. I've always eaten meat, even before I did carnivore or keto. I've always loved meat. So
Mm.
my thing is, I
Um,
didn't climb all the way to the top of the food chain to become a vegetarian. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I'm not sure about what this could be, but I think you just got to do what you got to do. And, if that means just sticking to, say, eggs and trying some other kind of, like, have you tried some seafood? Maybe if you put seafood in there, you do fish or something, maybe that might be more tolerable for you at the moment. Yeah, otherwise I'm not so sure.
Yeah, if you could have been bit by a tick, I would check that out. If you're in those areas where it could happen, you can
Mm.
look that up. My other thing was going to be exactly what Dave said. Is it a aversion to like pork? Did you like bacon before and now you don't even like bacon? Or is it just red meat? And is it just a certain cut of red meat that you've always eaten, like
Yeah, shit.
ground? Like I can't eat ground a lot. And so it's that kind of a thing where I don't really like eating much ground meat. I mean, I like it and it's good, but it's not something I could do all the time. So I tend to just eat like my lamb all the time now, or cheap cuts unless I find
Mm.
something really good.
Yeah, she says she
So
used to eat it regularly. And B Rose, by the way, said get variety, eat 2 or 3 meats at a time of different kinds. But yeah, so
yeah,
she says she's from North Dakota, probably does not have the
no.
tick bite, and that she used to eat meat all the time. Oh, and hello to Fairlight. I didn't tell her I was going to be on, so it's nice to see her. She must have got the email notification. Fairlight's my youngest daughter, by the way,
Yeah.
who her and her husband have
I do
just
like the
moved
Hey,
and their
minimalism
baby
idea.
Fairlight.
So the
to
simply
Fort
simply
McCoy.
minimalist. I am curious if you're kind of like a minimalist type personality too. I'm just curious. I'm gonna have to go take pictures of like my drawer one day where like my forks are all perfectly stacked and the spoons are perfectly stacked and the knives
That's
are
an,
pure
that
chaos because they don't stack and it just freaks me out. Or
that's
like
not
my drawer where everything
minimalist,
is
Chad.
perfectly
That
well no,
minimalist is
but
that
that's
you only
part of
have
the
one
minimalist thing of
fork.
not
That's right.
necessarily. The
OCD
minimalist is
is that
just
they
having
have to
what
be
you
stacked
need. Correct. But
correctly.
I'm saying, but the minimalist is also you can have multiple. It's just only what you need. Like we have enough for the family, but that's it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Me,
well,
I just have my chopsticks on the side and the one spoon. And actually, when Karen met me, she knows
yeah.
this. I had one fork that I would use if I used a fork, and that was it. That was the only fork I used. Period. And I
Mm.
have the same thing. Like I have one, basically, usually just one spoon I use most of the time. Unless I don't have it, then I'll just quickly use another one. But, like my clothes are the same way, kind of thing. Very few,
And
very
the
much the
giant,
same.
by the way, is watching from the Philippines. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I think he said hello from the Philippines.
Mm.
Yes, Manila.
Here's an interesting one. I'd say zero carb. There's been a few people talking about carnivore, what it is. See, to me, hyper carnivore is those people that are 70%. That's exactly what hyper carnivore is. 70% of your diet comes from things. I always say a true carnivore is kind of just, in the animal kingdom, and strict is you're just maybe toward lion, but you're fairly strict with it. But I don't think it matters, but I think the definition helps because somebody can say, well, I'm doing carnivore and I'm not having results. Well, if they're considering carnivore a hyper carnivore and 30% of their intake is still plants, to me that's not true straight carnivore. So you would be hyper carnivore. And that's I think the only thing where the definition comes into play is when people are having a problem, what is what they're calling carnivore.
Mm.
Does that make sense with you guys? What do you think of that quick thought?
Yeah, I always kind of I get the feel when someone says to me, "It's not working for me." I'm doing carnivore. It's not working for me, and then they say, "I say, what do you eat?" And so I'll have steak and blah 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 blah, and I'll have a few Brussels sprouts, and then that's like, oh, hang on, okay, can you elaborate a little bit more on the Brussels
Yeah.
sprout type things? And then it's like, it's not just the few Brussels sprouts and stuff.
Yeah. And see, that to me is then a hyper carnivore. And it's easier just to say, well, I'm kind of keto or I'm loose carnivore. I think only just for the definition that it might help other people understand where you're from, if you're
Yeah.
having an issue.
And
It just
I
helps
think
kind of define it.
it's still one of the things where people use that term so incredibly. I mean, keto as well, right? Ketovore,
Mhm.
carnivore. The term is used so loosely, right? And the only downside is if somebody thinks they're doing something and they're not, right? That's probably the downside. Like if they're not really, if they think they're doing carnivore, I mean, it only matters if they think they're doing what they should be doing and it's not working, right? And so, well, I tried that, it didn't work. Uh, I think it's even worse with the term keto because I know people, oh, I did keto, but like, that means they were eating keto
I did
flour
it for the first
tortillas
year,
and
but I
keto
had a
bread
lot of junk.
and
Yeah.
keto stuff, right? And okay, well, no wonder, right? It's not really. So I for that, I just try to say whole food, right? Like whole food
Yeah.
keto, or I lots of times say mostly carnivore. People
Yeah.
ask me, and then I have to define what exactly that is.
I'm
So
going to hit
I
on
do
this.
mostly carnivore.
Yeah. The OCD thing, I know I have that, but the minimalist, I'd like till I was literally in my 30s, I lived out of 3 bags. That's all I had. Like literally, like, you know what I mean? So that was pretty
Yeah.
minimal. And like when I met my wife, when I was in my 30s, my biggest place I was in was 420 square feet. And there was like almost nothing in any of the drawers or in any of the things. And I was fine with that. But I'm just saying that other side of me too, besides being, because a lot of minimalists are neat freaks just by their nature, because they have so few things. So they tend to be, you know what I mean? That extremely maybe combined with that. But it is funny because I actually miss that. I actually miss having nothing. Because with kids and everything in a bigger house, it's so much. And sometimes there's just too much stuff. And it's like doing the YouTube stuff or doing like I do with photography, you have to have stands and lights and things, So to me, that's not, it's how much of the setup do you go with what you have. That's what I've known. But it was funny because I know in a lot of people I would meet, like even later on, they wouldn't believe that that's all I have. It's like, that's it. That's all. I've got my bicycle and my thing. And because for a long time, I've always liked cars, but it's like I didn't even have a car for a long time in some of the areas because there was just no need for one. Japan's probably like that for you, Dave. You don't really probably need the car as much.
Yeah, it's minimalist in some ways, but not in others.
Yeah,
like I think what happens is, even though you only have a small space, you end up collecting a lot of junk. Like the room I'm in right now, it looks like a bomb's hit it. It's it's good for audio that way, but
Yeah.
I have never been without a car since 3 months before my 16th birthday. So sometimes I'm on multiples, but I've never been with none.
Yeah. I've usually had to have them in the U.S. when I'm working. Even in Hawaii, I had to have cars. But like when I was in the Caribbean and stuff, you didn't have to have a car because everything was within walking distance.
You wouldn't want one, though?
Not when I was there, no, because it would be way too expensive to try to do anything with. I think there's some places where you truly don't need it, and I've lived in a couple of those places.
Mm.
I
don't need it, but I miss
that.
driving.
There's like parking and things and getting to work. And when you can literally get to like, and I love cars, don't get me wrong, but like, if you could get to the rail or, the train or whatever in almost less time than it would take you to find the parking space, and then you can be efficient on the way there. I can see why people don't.
That's the difference, I guess.
US.
Like if there was a bus that stopped at my driveway every day, I wouldn't get on it. Right.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I don't do
I'll let
public
Dave
transit
answer this one, the plants, including
because
coffee.
I like to
I don't do
drive
buses.
and be in
I don't do
control.
buses.
Yeah.
I want to be able to come and go as I like, not wait for a train, a bus.
Well, the subways or trains I think are so different.
Subway,
there, too,
same
though.
way. I rode a subway in New York just for the experience. But you know, I want to be able to come and
plants,
go.
including coffee. See, I still kind of consider coffee a plant.
So it is a plant.
Yeah.
But again,
one of the
if you're
most sprayed
carnivore and only
plants,
doing
right?
like coffee and a couple other things like that, I don't think it's a big deal. I think it just helps to know if that comes up.
Mm.
You're not getting a lot of carbs from it.
Yeah, that would be key.
I mean, tea is a plant, right? I mean,
yeah.
Pepper is a plant. I use it every day.
Just fun to see another minimalist type person in there. Moved to Mexico over 2 years ago. Watch all those channels, especially the men, of course. Coming to the Philippines. I think that's kind of also like to that other guy who's living over there. They were talking about that. So I remember the icon about that. Now with Mexico, remember that.
Fairlight said I'm very antisocial. I'm not really.
A very antisocial social person.
I think this is the key right here. I think unless definitions are adhered to, it confuses new. That's what I think is the problem. Some people don't know. And it's not a huge deal. It does help people kind of define what it is, you know, where it's like, oh, I'm doing carnivore, and like, here's my plate, and here's my green beans, and here's my roasted onions. And, you know, they're like, oh, okay, I could do that.
Yeah. Well, and even though that would be probably keto, you know, yeah,
not probably that.
Most people probably can still have success with that, but they're not gonna. It's when they say I'm carnivore, but they have like the giant baked potato is really the, you know, in a bread roll. Yeah. You're not even in keto then, right? Like, you know, it's like now you've departed. You've left the path, right? So pepper, coffee, all from seeds. Yeah.
Yes, they can,
really
definitely.
I don't even really eat spices at all. Very rarely. You know, well, you guys know all this stuff together.
Dr. Chafee would disagree that pepper, coffee are all from seeds. Well, no, he doesn't. Dr. Chafee doesn't like any of those things. I'm not sure if you mean somebody else might have said it was I don't know exactly. Maybe he's saying Dr. Chafee would disagree that it's okay, or that it's carnivore.
Would disagree that it's carnivore and you shouldn't be eating it. Maybe as what he probably.
But see that it's the only problem with
he's not even doing salt anymore.
Yeah, it's the only problem with definitions that the only thing about having definitions is the fact that definitions normally come about because there's a collective agreement upon what that definition means. And the issue with carnivore is there is none of that. So, there's
some loose ones, and that's the problem.
Yeah, there's loose ones, but that's it. Some people define
because it doesn't really apply to humans as much as it was a term that Dr. Baker started using when other people were saying they were meat-based, and they were saying, I'm meat-based, which means I only eat meat and animal product. And then some of those guys who started the big thing, I think it was on Reddit, quite a while ago, it's like, and I only eat raw meat.
See that
salt. And that's pretty hard. That's Mr.
Issue,
Lion right there. If you're eating raw meat and no salt and that's it,
because some people would define carnivore as no dairy or no coffee or no pepper. And some people say, hey, none of that matters, because really what they mean is I do animal based with, zero extra carb intake outside of animal products. Right. So, I mean, people all define it differently. It's probably the one reason why I just explain usually what I do to people, as opposed to saying, I use the term mostly carnivore all the time. And if they want to know what that means, I'm happy to tell them. And, you know, but some people are extremely strict about the definition. It's like, but here's the thing. Why do you get to make the definition up? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's not. What do you think of this, Dave? This being strict is not necessary.
I agree. Being strict is not necessary. As we've been talking about, it comes back to, you know, your individual needs, but it can be easier, definitely, because it's clear and simple. So if you say, like, part of the problem, I think, with the way we're eating and getting people on board is that, you know, there's not necessarily a step-by-step plan, you know, because there's no carnivore program, right? It's just like, just go to the supermarket and buy meat, and, you know, there's no one out there selling courses on, you know, this is how to be carnivore. And that's a good thing, but, you know, some people like to have a switch, and some people like to follow steps. And so in that case, it definitely is easier to be clear and simple, you know, and that's it. Okay, well, you're going to be eating your 3 meals a day until you don't need that. And those 3 meals are only going to be made up of steak and eggs until, you know, until we say otherwise, or something like that.
Yeah,
that's kind of what
I think that's why Dr. Berry often says his beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Like, just, you go 30 days or 90 days, you eat as much beef, butter, bacon, and eggs as you want. Like, it's simple. That's your meal plan, right? Eat it. If you're hungry, eat, right? If you're hungry enough to eat a meal, eat as much as you feel like it. Do it. And then after that, you can reintroduce things. Yeah, the issue with strict, I think, is always the thing where, which we mentioned it earlier, it's a matter of what works for you. Some people have to be, Michaela Peterson has to be ultra strict, right? Like, if she eats soy, it like debilitates her for 3 weeks. Okay. She eats beef and salt and water. That's it, because of all the issues that she has with autoimmune and how it affects her mentally and all of that kind of stuff. Well, fortunately for me, I don't have that, right? And so I'm way looser than either you or Chad, Dave, but it doesn't really impact me, right? Some people can't put a carb in their mouth because of the fact that they're afraid that it's going to be like the alcoholic taking a drink of bourbon, right? Now it's going to be a fifth. And so it's all of that kind of stuff where it doesn't have to be super strict, as long as it works for you, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't stop eating, Twinkies and Ho-Hos, if you have something sweet on the weekend, then you better be strict, right? So
yeah, I don't think any of us are that dogmatic, luckily, but I think at some point I tell everybody this: just try the lion diet for 90 days, so you know for sure 100%, and then bring things back in, because without ever kind of hitting that peak point of cleanliness, if you want to call it that, or whatever you want to say, you might not know when you bring stuff back in what it's like. And that's why I quit drinking coffee 2 years into my journey, because even at 1.5 years when I quit and I restarted, I didn't really notice any difference, and it wasn't until that point. So I agree, it's totally not necessary, but it is interesting because, for me, I just like it because it's easy. It's just so easy. Today, like, I had that shabu type New York cut that we can get sometimes, and it looked really good. It almost looked like prime grade. And I just grilled it. I didn't even do the whole, proper way of doing it. I just threw a bunch of pieces of it on the grill and had a big plate of it today. And it was easy. It was just like, there's nothing to it. The same thing with my lamb I ate so much of. It's just, the only thing that's hard about those are the stupid little T-bone shapes and trying to get all the meat out of the little T-bone shapes.
Yeah. Metabolic paramedic said being strict helps achieve optimal, which is we kind of, I don't know if we may have talked about that before we came online, but coffee, pepper surely contribute to suboptimal risk increasing, and absolutely. But we all, I think Professor McKay, Bart K, sorry, says that's it. We all we all do things, not all of us, most of us do things that are suboptimal, but we all have to decide where we can live, right? Um, and so, would it be better if I just quit dairy totally? Probably. But can I live with a little bit of problems, issues that it gives me? Yeah. And so it's like, do I do everything that's optimal? No. But I just, you got to find that place where you get the results that you want, you feel good, and you're able to deal with it, right? If I had to be super strict, would I feel better? Well, maybe. Would I live a few years longer? Probably. But do I
Well, I
want
think
to do that? Right. That's
to be
really,
quick,
that's where we all have to
to
make that decision.
to be quick on this, being strict helps achieve optimal. It did for me, like I said, with coffee 2 years in. Some people can have coffee and not have, or pepper and not really have adverse reactions. Now, will they have it 3 years later if they test again? Or some people just might never notice it. Are they just never going to heal that much? Or is it just truly, it just doesn't bug them?
Yeah.
I've even heard
Or
Dr. Baker say, hey, you look at some of these dudes who are top athletes at what they do in the world, and they're eating vegetables and they're eating carbs, and they're some of the best athletes in the world.
yeah.
They're not being hurt by eating that because they're balancing it back out with other things they do. So I agree. And I'm also, even though I'm very dogmatically strict, if somebody wants pepper or they enjoy that thing on there and it doesn't bug them, they might be in good enough shape where it just doesn't bug them, because the human body is pretty darn,
Yeah.
like
Pretty
me, the
resilient.
things that get me are my allergies. As I sit here and wipe my nose once in a while, I still have allergies, like 5% of what I did. But again, my allergies were so bad, I was like an anaphylactic shock into my 20s from things that would hit me. So, I mean, I was bad, bad, bad.
Drinking
So,
coffee, I don't know how much Dave drinks, but I drink a lot, and I know that it impacts my sleep. Right? Is that
Yeah.
going to cut 2 years off my lifespan? I mean,
no, it's going
probably.
to cut 4 off. So,
Okay, it's going to cut 4 off. So twice as bad as what I'm thinking. But you know what? Look, if I
just
make it
having
to
me as a friend is a danger right now, I feel
if I
like,
make it to
unfortunately.
116, right, and I'm 4 years short of my goal of 120, then I can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, sorry, just to jump in, I'm gonna have to bounce.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for starting early today.
Yeah. No, we
And
can
thanks
always do
everyone
that.
for
You know
joining
that.
us. I even though I'm leaving, anyone that's watching on my channel, this will still be running, so you can continue watching. Thanks a lot,
Okay. We'll
guys.
probably
See you
wrap
next
it up.
time.
Take care, man. We'll see you.
Thank you, Dave. Great to
Cheers.
see you.
See ya. Bye.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up pretty quickly, I believe, Chad,
Yeah.
because it's a couple minutes after 5 right now. Fairlight said
Yeah.
she can attest to me not being super strict when she visited. I already told him before we went live, Fairlight, about all the bad
Yeah.
stuff.
And I'm pretty, I'm still
Responses
pretty
to
good. I
mold.
I don't ever jump outside. Like I said, if I jump out to anything in carnivore, it's maybe some cream with something for a sauce or something, but I don't do well with dairy, so I just tend not to. But sometimes like I said, I know that balance and I'm like, well, I'm okay with that, for a little bit, but otherwise, and besides maybe a little bit of season, if my boy has some taco meat or something, I might have a little bit sometimes if it's there and, whatever. But otherwise, I don't even do anything but smoked salt meat. And the only cheese I really eat is like hard Parmesan for the no gallbladder. So, and if I didn't have to have that, I wouldn't have it, but it helps. And so the little bit of downsides of inflammation is worth it to me.
The B Rose asked if I think she was meaning, were you experiencing responses to mold and not just allergies? I don't know about Dave, but Chad, but we are similar in this way. I had incredibly, like, nonstop for years, chronic sinus infections, like severe, taking allergy pills every day, nonstop. And I now am back to where, I still have a little bit of congestion the way that Chad does, but I'm about 95% better. I still am impacted some by pollen. I know that does happen, but I don't know exactly what it is that just ultimately triggers me. Maybe some dairy, It may be. I still eat peanuts sometimes. Those have mold in them probably. So I have
Yeah.
no idea. But the
Since
thing is, it's so much better than it was before that it's
yeah,
like
since I've
it's
been
so radically
carnivore,
different that now I'm just happy that it's not
yeah.
like nonstop 24 hours a day and I can breathe through my nose most of the time.
For me, since I've started carnivore, I can't say because when I lived outside in other areas or other places, even other countries, I always had about the same amount of allergies, no matter where I was. My worst ones are or were pollens and things like that. Those are pretty much all gone, but I still have food allergies. If I get garlic and stuff, I can really feel it and really sense it. You know, the couple of times, like a couple years ago, my buddy took me out to a Brazilian all-you-can-eat place, and I was like, well, what the heck, you know, if it comes with some garlic on there, they had something that was, you know, some garlic meat, and I had it.
A little
and I
bit
could
of
totally
seed
hit it.
oil, a
So
little
I'm
bit of
like,
garlic.
I'm like, just don't bring that out anymore. And I had the other stuff. The mold, you know, it could be. I mean, but I don't know how much we have here in the house, so I don't know exactly if that's it. And I am curious about it, so it's not something that I would ever dismiss because I know the mold can be a serious issue. But I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
now I am so good with stuff that it's strictly thing because the second I have something with a seasoning or like I even get a histamine response with meat. And like today when I was cooking that shabu, I know I was even eating a bunch of it. We were talking about this the other day, you weren't on here, but I was talking about eating meat raw and like I was at, you know, the thin sliced meat. It was just
Right.
New York slice and I was eating a bunch of it raw because it would like I'd throw some on, then pieces would fall, and I'd just eat it because if I threw the small pieces on the grill, they would fall through the grill. And I get histamine from that, but if I do that with the lamb, I don't get as much histamine response.
Yeah.
So I do think it's an interesting perception from that. I will say
Yeah.
this about my giving up
Michaela
coffee.
does do the lion diet.
Okay, yeah.
Beef
For
and
the giving
beef
up
and
coffee,
salt.
one thing that's interesting, my whole life, I could never, ever, ever get to sleep properly. And this was from when I was little all the way up through. And when I finally, and this is even before I quit, before I drank coffee, I even had problems where I didn't do it, where I couldn't shut my mind down. Okay. So this wasn't just a coffee thing. But what I found interesting is even in the carnivore times, I still had this not being able to shut my mind down and get to sleep. But once I quit coffee, I could shut my mind down and then get to sleep. For the first time in my life, I've actually been able to go to bed at like 8:39 and get up at 5:30 on my own, which is interesting, not from an alarm clock and not from anything else. Now, my theory of that is that that's what we should be doing naturally as humans, but coffee was the thing keeping me up, like so many people do. It does keep people up and it doesn't allow them to get as good a sleep. So the carnivore healed me, but the coffee was masking that perfect healing of being able to go to bed when it's dark and get up when it's light. That's my perception of it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Butter at bedtime is a great sleep aid. That might be true. I eat
It
lots of
is.
stuff that's detrimental to my sleep, and I just, I know that I do. Coffee is one of them.
I don't know the lacto-fermented. I'm not familiar with the lacto-fermented is just fermented, or is that kind of one and the same, or is that like yogurts and certain things on the lacto? I'll have to look that up. But Sean O'Mara, who's a guy who's walking the walk, you look at that guy, and he's the sprinting guy for some of you carnivores,
Yeah.
I'm sure that know him. Dude's in awesome shape, and he's really big on fermented foods because he's like, that is something that, you know, other people in cultures and history used to do that actually made some of the foods more, I guess, consumable to us people. So, see, and there's again where I think it's cool if people are experimenting with this and trying the fermented things or whatever, because that's what it's about to me is like finding your optimum and testing your optimum. So if it works, that's
if you're
pretty
not familiar
awesome to
with
hear.
Dr. Sean O'Mara, you should go check him out. He has he's incredible. Yeah, he is in great shape. He's 60 now, maybe 61, and he's done everything. He's like a lawyer, went to med school, was an undercover DEA agent or something like that. He's done all kinds of stuff in his life. Now he's a doctor.
Yeah.
So
Sharp guy.
yeah, served as
Yogurt culture,
emergency
sauerkraut.
care
Okay, that's
physician,
what I
I
thought
think,
then,
for
yeah.
two presidents, or one president
like
and
Sean
two
O'Mara.
Secretary of States. So great story.
Well, I think we'll sign off.
Yes, yeah,
Casomorphine's
it's a little
probably
after
help support
a little
this.
after 5.
Casomorphine is a serious addictively thing. And you look it up. When you look up milk, it's actually made nature, as I would say, God's made this perfect mom's milk that does make the babies addicted, because that way the babies will always be craving their mother's milk and make sure they get enough in nature to grow up strong and quick equally. And that's actually, when you look that up, you can see that written quite a bit, that the scientists will kind of agree on that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, we're going to sign off. I thank everybody so much for showing up, and
Yes.
we will see you next time.
Greatly
So my
appreciate it.
infamous
It was
Ahui ho.
great to all 3 of us to be on again for the first time in probably 2 months, I would guess. So
Yep.
But I'll see you in a couple weeks, Chad, and I'm hopefully Dave will be back with us. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I greatly appreciate it. Take care.